So I'm going to sort of fly through this practice because you should have already gotten through it. I just want to explain some of the ideas and intuition behind some of the answers. So looking at this first one, consumers' income increases. Well, the fact that it says consumers tells us that it's going to be a demand kind of thing. And we say consumers' income increases. So does that mean they're going to take more or fewer vacations? Well, since they're making more money, they're going to take more vacations, assuming that vacations are a normal good. We're going to see a shift to the right of our demand curve, and that shifter is going to be their income. So new data is released on the hazards of smoking. We're going to think about this in terms of demand. And if new data is released on the hazards of smoking, that's going to cause people to not want to smoke as much. And so it's going to decrease our demand for cigarettes. It's going to be a shift back to the left. And that's actually going to fall under preferences because now people prefer not to smoke as much, right? So it's a decrease in demand. So the good or service is beef, and pork is increasing in price here. And so since pork is increasing in price, we know that pork and beef are substitutes to one another. And so we're going to have our demand curve here. And if pork gets more expensive, people aren't going to buy as much pork anymore, and they're going to need to find something else to eat. And so they're going to find beef to eat instead. And so we're going to see a demand increase for beef because these are substitutes. All right. Spam, and no one note here, spam is an inferior good. And I think I'd actually use this as an example in one of the videos. So consumers, again, consumers and incomes, those are two key words right there. Their income decreases. Now, if their income decreases, that means they're not going to be buying as many fancy steak dinners, right? Fancy steak dinners, that's a normal good. But remember we said things that are inferior are things that are like kind of like the generic or off-brand or whatever it might be. So as our income goes down, we might have to stop eating fancy steak dinners and start eating more spam instead. And so that's going to be a shift to the right, an increase. And again, this is going to be income. But the key thing to be paying attention to there is that it's an inferior good. So as our income goes down, we're going to buy more of that. All right, cream as the price of coffee decreases. Well, what are cream and coffee to one another? Well, they're complements, right? We typically have those things together. You put creamer in your coffee. So as the price of coffee decreases, what we're going to see is that as coffee gets cheaper, people want to buy more coffee. And if they're buying more coffee, they also have to buy more cream. So our demand for cream is going to increase. It's going to be a shift to the right. And again, this one is going to be complements because those are the things that we buy together. And finally, computers. Consumers, again, keyword, expect the price of consumers to drop on Black Friday. So Black Friday has not happened yet, but we expect that those prices are going to fall on Black Friday. They're going to go down. And if we know it's going to get cheaper, I don't want to buy a new computer right now. So my demand for computers is going to decrease right now because I expect, right? So expectations. I expect the price to be cheaper in the future. So if you guys notice, those are all demand there. And we're just paying attention to which way it's shifting and the why. So let's move on to some supply. So here what we have is cars. The United Auto Workers Union negotiates a large wage increase for workers. Now, one thing I want us to notice here is you could actually technically argue this one two different ways, and I'll give you guys both of those ways. The way I would read this is that there's a large wage increase for workers, and workers are an input cost, right? Like you have to pay your workers in order to work. And if you're paying your workers more now, that's more money going to the same number of people. And so what that actually means is less money overall to produce cars, so a decrease in supply. Now, if you read this and you said, you know what, people are getting paid more, that's going to increase their productivity. And if you argued it that way, I would accept that as well. So like, and it would look like that, or an increase in our supply curve. So as long as like it's something that you can provide a rationale that makes sense, I'm good. I'm going to do my best to not give you guys those, because I don't want you guys to get confused, and be like, oh, which one is this? But like I said, I would argue input costs here. But if you did put productivity and drew that, I would accept that because I could see how you could rationalize that and say that. All right, the government places a tax on the producers of cigarettes. Again, this is on the producers, so we know it's a supply thing. And so the producers now have to pay more money, and therefore the idea there is they are going to not be able to supply as many cigarettes because they have more money going to Uncle Sam than they do have going to the production of their cigarettes. So the shifter there is a tax, and now that they have to pay more tax, less money going toward cigarettes. All right. A new computer production technology is developed. So the keyword there is technology. So we know this one is going to be productivity and technology. And if it's a new production developed, we assume that it's positive, like that they're not coming up with new technology to make it worse off for us producing computers. And so therefore it would shift to the right, our supply curve. All right, beef, as producers expect the price of beef to rise next month. So again, it's producers, so we know it's a supply thing. And whenever we say this, we say, all right, they expect the price to go up next month in the future. It has not happened yet. So do they want to sell beef right now, or do they want to sell it next month whenever it's more expensive? You got that right. They want to sell it next month. So right now, they're going to back off. They're not going to be producing as much right now because they would rather sell it later, right? So again, this one is expectations. All right, two more. We got avocados. A hurricane destroys avocado crops in Mexico. So again, this is a supply thing, and this is one of those things that we refer to as a supply shock. So we had mentioned that one before, and this is one that's actually considered a negative supply shock because it's destroying those crops, and therefore our supply of avocados is going to decrease. We don't have as many avocados as we did before because of the weather. And finally, a burrito shop in town. Oh no, it closes down. That's terrible. A burrito shop closes down in town. We know because of that there's going to be fewer burritos because now there's not as many people making burritos. And we see that this is the number of sellers. And so I actually think we made it through all 6 letters of Spites here on the back page. I think on the front page we almost made it through all of the demand. It looks like the one that we didn't do was the number of buyers. And so just make sure you guys are remembering biceps and Spites.